Hey everyone, Ryan Young, KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu. Hope you're doing well. So, I wanted to kind of give another idea on this whole, can I get a black belt thing, because, it's funny because, one thing I do want is I want everybody to be able to earn a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. I really do. Because it signifies a long, hard journey that you rode to get to somewhere. Now, I have another analogy for you to use in trying to explain what qualifies somebody to earn a black belt, right? And it's the old formula, your technique plus your physicality, your T plus your P equals your overall game. And as much as Jiu-Jitsu is the T in it, there has to be some kind of combination to it, meaning you can not only know everything, but you can make it work. And you have to be able to make it work at a certain level, above a certain level. Now, what is that level? It's really, really hard to delineate that. Now, another caveat too is that a brown belt, technically, as far as Dave Kama is concerned, he tells me and tells everybody, a brown belt technically is and should be as good as a black belt. Now, a black belt, of course, will have more years training than a brown belt. So the black belt, provided he's got good physicality or enough physicality, will continue to refine his technique and continue to have that equation further growing, his physicality plus his technicality. Right, but there is a minimum level, and according to Dave Kama, your brown belt is good enough to be a black belt. Now, the black belt, it's often some other intangibles that could be there as well that would get somebody over the top of the brown belt and into the black belt. A lot of the black belt thing is when we give out belts, we think of we take possession of the student, right? Yeah, you're my blue belt, you're my purple belt. Or you're a KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, that type of thing. However, the black belt is a little bit different, because a black belt it's almost like forever, right? Because when you give a black belt to someone, when you award a black belt to someone, then what happens is they can now take that belt and they can, they're now forever tied to you, right? It always comes down to, it doesn't matter who gave you a brown belt. Whenever you're training, you're an instructor, or somebody wants to know what's your lineage comes down to your black belt. Just like how when you go to college, right? If you say, I graduated from, let's just use Alabama, right? I graduated from University of Alabama, Roll Tide, right? But, I went to LSU, Louisiana State, for the first 3 years, and my final year was spent at Alabama. People are not going to ask if I went to LSU. They're going to ask where I graduated, and they're going to go, and I'm going to say Alabama, and they're not going to go, oh, all 4 years? No, they're going to say, oh, okay, so you're an Alabama alumni. Okay, cool, right? And I'll be forever known as an Alabama alumni, right? The same thing happens with the black belt. You spend all your time training all different kinds of places, white through brown, and then you go to another place and you get your black belt. You're now tied to that instructor. People who are thinking that, I haven't been at this place, I've been at this place so long and I'm still a brown belt. There's often some intangibles as to why the instructor does not want to give you the black belt, unfortunately. That's kind of the way it is. On the other hand, you as a brown belt go to another school and expect to be there for a while before, you do get your black belt, if you get it at all. Now, here's that analogy I wanted to run, right? Most of you know that I'm a big fan of Formula One, the racing. And why? Well, because anything that you're running against clocks, and anything you're running against as far as places, first place, second place, third place, and all that, it's usually pretty cut and dried. I say usually because, there are things that can make a race interesting, right? Safety cars, pit stops, blown engines, all that kind of stuff. But that's really what I'm trying to say, is that, at the end of the day, there is, a set level to get to Formula One, right? And if you think of it as far as belts goes, you can start off as, little putt-putt go-karts, right? You're racing those things around a little track. Then you start going to shifter carts, right? So your putt go-karts are your number one, your white belt. And then your your blue belt could be your shifter carts, right? These are the ones, the carts that go between 80 and 120 miles an hour. Go-karts go that fast, unbelievable, right? So that's your blue belt. And then you get to, let's say, Formula 3. That's your purple belt. Formula 2 is your brown belt. And Formula 1 is your black belt, right? So there's only 20 Formula 1 drivers at any one given time, because there's only 10 teams right now. So, but these are the best of the best. So if you think of it in terms of a belt level, you are going to have those drivers that really don't belong in a Formula 1 car. Well, why is that? Well, because they have what are called pay drivers, right? You have some teams that are really on a tight shoestring budget, and they're trying to make ends meet, but they can't. So here's what happens. A driver may have access to a lot of sponsorship money. So there was a particular driver, a Russian driver named, I can't remember his name anymore, but his father was a big Russian tycoon, billionaire, right? Fertilizer company, Uralkali was the name of his company, and his son was Nikita Mazepin, that's what it was. And what he did was he told Williams, was it Williams? No, it was Haas, the driving team. One of the back markers, as they call them, one of the lower level teams, and they need money. So Father Mazepin comes in and says, well, I'll give you $20 million a year, but my son gets to have a seat on the team. Well, he did have a seat on the team because his father bought him a seat, meaning he bought his black belt, so to speak, right? But when it came out, time for competition or the fight, whatever, however you want to measure it, but in this case, it's the race, the Grand Prix, he was always among last place people, right? If not last place, he was almost last place. It's because he was just not at the level, right? So let's say, but then again, you say, well, there are some drivers that are, say, the best drivers, but yet they're not winning races, right? Fernando Alonso is one who won 2 world championships. Another one is Sebastian Vettel, 4 world championships, but they're in cars that are not winning, right? So the car is the P, the physicality, right? And the T, your technicality, is your ability to drive, right? Your innate ability. But let's say it takes a minimum of 1 minute and 20 around a particular racetrack to be a Formula 1 driver, right? So you could be in Formula 2, which is the one level down, let's call it the brown belt level, and you're doing 135. Instead of 120, you're doing 135. Not sure if that's really the difference, but it is. So, the top Formula 2 drivers hitting at 135, 1 minute 35 seconds a lap, whereas the average Formula 1 driver is doing 1 minute 20 seconds a lap. Well, what's the difference? Well, you could have a Formula 2 driver that the next year, their very first year in Formula 1, they're dominating. Well, if they get in with the right team and they get the right car, then yeah, they're going to do that. So, the top driver, his name is Max, right? Max Verstappen, and he drives for Red Bull. But he's not the best, well, he may be the best driver, it's hard to say, but he's certainly in the best combination of the best car, and he's among the best drivers. So you put a good car under him, you give him a good P, that's the equivalent of having a great body built for jiu-jitsu, right? So if you have the best car, your Red Bull, your Ferrari, your Mercedes, you're looking at that male, who is maybe in his mid-20s, maybe 30, about 6 foot to 6'4", and about 190 to 210 pounds. Right, so that is the best race car, right? So if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, if you have that particular build, you will be the best of the best, right? And plus your technicality. So to be the best of the best, you have to have both your good technicality plus your good physicality. So like a race car driver, you have to be a top driver in a top car, right? But what if you are a top driver in a crappy car, right? Aston Martin, Haas, Williams, those type of cars, but you're still a top driver, right? Or Alpine. So Fernando Alonso, 2-time world champion, is driving, an Alpine. Sebastian Vettel, 4-time, is driving an Aston Martin. Both cars. And then you have up until, the time of this recording, after 6 races, Lewis Hamilton over at Mercedes, 8 or 7-time world champion, and he's running the average of, I don't know, 6th, 7th, 8th place, because his car is not as good as the Red Bull or the Ferrari. So here you have a legend in driving, but he's driving a car that's not legend, right? What is that the equivalent of? That's the equivalent of the world champion black belt who's starting to age, and his body doesn't run as fast, doesn't move as fast, reflexes aren't as quick as they used to be when he was in his 20s. Now he's in his 30s or 40s, right? And that's what'll happen. As you get older in jiu-jitsu, your car, the car you run with, will become slower. It'll break down more often, be less reliable. It won't be, as able to run as long and as hard, right, as a top level race car, or that mid 20s to 30s, male who's 6'3", 6'4", and about 200 pounds, right? So now it comes down to, let's say you started jiu-jitsu late. So you started with a broken down car, but you learned how to drive, and you learned the concept of, the way to take turns, and the way to hit the brakes, and the way to hit the gas and slide. But your body just doesn't respond the way you want it to. Your mind is knowing what needs to be done, but your body's going, yeah, sorry, it's not there, right? And if a certain level of achievement in jiu-jitsu is a combination of the two, as Dave Kama says in those videos, you need to have a minimum level of achievement, right? Somebody say, okay, well, look at you, Ryan, you're a small guy, and yeah, and well, yes, but I started at age 21, and from age 21 till maybe age 45, I was going after people. It didn't matter how big, how strong you were. I was always the first one to say, all right, let's go, you and me, right? Because that's how I was. I never shied away from size, strength, or speed. I went after it the whole time, especially in my 20s and 30s. Of course, there's sometimes that I would just be overwhelmed, but my whole thinking was, okay, how can I do it anyway, right? So, I was the equivalent of, let's say a well-accomplished driver in a car that was still developing, but the car still had potential, right? And when I hit my peak, probably in my late 30s, 40s, early 40s, whatever, in my training, that's when I got my black belt. Now, people would say, well, now that you're older, does that mean that you're going to lose your belt when you become less proficient? Well, as Dave says, no, because at one point in time, I was there, right? So, you got Fernando Alonso driving in a car that is not a world champion level quality car. He is, I think, 40, right? So he's the oldest driver on the grid, but he's still fast. If you put him in a fast car, you give him a good body, then he will be fast, and he will be able to run along with the top drivers. He's that good. But the car that he has just can't deliver, right? That's the same thing for that senior citizen who comes in and he's not able to really achieve because his car doesn't move fast enough. Same thing for that smaller person who's not as strong. Ladies, right? So let's say you have a driver who can't be among the top in the Formula 2, Formula 3 type, so brown or purple belt level in racing, but can never get to, the top levels because they didn't start early enough. They don't have the reflexes that are quick enough. But they get up to the Formula 3, Formula 2 levels, and they never make the Formula 1. There's a ton of drivers that got up to Formula 3 and could go no further. There's a ton that got to Formula 2 and could go no further. They just don't have that combination of the technicality plus the physicality. And one of the things about the physicality that's important is durability. That's one of the reasons why starting young, right? If, being a top level competitor, a top level fighter, or even a black belt at a particularly challenging school, they're not going to give you your Formula 1 license if you're not, able to run that fast, right? Even if they put you in a fast car, you're still not running 120s, you're running, 125, 128, still faster than a Formula 2, but not quite at Formula 1 level, right? Which is where, the upper echelons run. So I hope that analogy helps you to kind of give you some context about the whole belt thing, because I know, this belt controversy is talked about ad nauseum, especially on our channel, and I don't like having to keep revisiting it, but I just want to make sure that we're all clear and realize that you're not training for the belt. You're training to learn the art and to better yourself. The belt is just simply a marker that comes after you hit certain points. If it gets to a point where you can't hit a certain point because of your body, because you just have, low Jiu-Jitsu IQ, right? You may have the body, but your body and mind just can't work together. Don't sweat it, right? Don't get upset. Don't say I'm going to quit or whatever. You have to enjoy the art, and the art gives you more benefits than a simple belt. So that's really all I have to discuss about this topic. So kind of, digest it, think about it, pose any questions below. I'd love to revisit it in another video if need be. But at the same time, I love to answer questions in the discussion as well. Come visit us at one of our studios. We have one in Irvine, California. That's Combat Jiu-Jitsu Irvine. We have Combat Jiu-Jitsu Dallas Fort Worth, which is in Flower Mound, Texas, and we have Combat Jiu-Jitsu Austin, Texas. Also, come visit us online at combatjujitsuonline.com, and that way you can learn all our curriculum and you can see our videos of us teaching and all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, that's all I got for you. Take care. Happy training. Bye now.